College football is unequivocally the best sport in the world. Scrolling on the interwebs today, saw that a goalie scored a goal in some soccer game. That's really cool and all. Doesn't hold a candle to college football. But we have got to do something about this calendar as we come to you here live from a very icy Blacksburg, Virginia, January 28th, year of our Lord, 2026, for another edition of Kolby's Corner. As James Franklin and co. try and maneuver a massive recruiting weekend, weather logistics, and all before the dead period of February. Don't know who decided that, shaking my head. But anyways, we can't fix that tonight, so we'll obviously talk some key visitors from this upcoming weekend, what was canceled last weekend, a little bit of facilities upgrades, staff salaries, a little pinch of team scoop very early here on January 28th, but a little team scoop what we're hearing, and certainly Q&A. So make sure to jump into the live chat and dump any questions you might have. And as always, got to start off by saying thank you guys so much for letting me live out a dream. The subscribing, liking, sharing really makes this whole thing go. Thank you guys so much. We love college football year round, and you've made that a possibility. So I'm forever indebted. So thank you. Keep supporting your boy. Be a friend, tell a friend to subscribe. It helps me out a ton. It means the world. It doesn't sign you up for anything. It's free, so make sure to subscribe to the show, like the video. It's free. Thank you, guys. Also, got to tell you, vtscoop.com, 24/7 sports. We're running a great VIP deal promo, $1 off, or excuse me, $1 for 2 months or 50% off VIP subscription for the year. I mean, you're getting team site intel, recruiting intel that we don't go into the show here, transfer portal, staffing, everything over on vtscoop.com. Really great deal. You have it until February 5th, but don't miss out on it. 2 months for $1 or a full annual subscription for 50% off. Or if you just want to get full price annual, you get Paramount Plus included. Got a massive UFC fight this weekend. A ton of value there. Really wrapped up into one. You get all FBS teams from message boards, recruiting. If you're a college football fanatic, which is why I presume you'd be here, really kind of a great deal. Cheaper than a cup of coffee a month. But yeah, that's that. I appreciate the support. Subscribe. Go check out vtscoop.com because there is no offseason. We're rolling. So we'll have a ton of content coming out there. I know I've been teasing some stuff, getting coaches on and certain things. Sounds like that's been delayed. Probably talking to Franklin and some of the staff middle of next week. So look for that on the channel. Subscribe, and we'll have a ton of written content stemming from that. But the biggest item upcoming this weekend is Virginia Tech Junior Day. As you know, last weekend, I guess is the first major multi-day recruiting event under James Franklin, and it's the makeup weekend after snow canceled last Junior Day from last Saturday. And this is their last chance to host prospects before February in the dead period, as we just touched on. The calendar is a little backwards, but this is the last chance for prospects to go to Virginia Tech up until, I guess, spring practice visits. So they're going to have a heavy focus on the 2027 class and then laying some of the early groundwork for 2028 and beyond. Obviously, quarterbacks in that cycle are going to be at a premium. We're going to discuss some of those names. But this Saturday, January 31st, and Sunday, 2-day Junior Day weekend of January 31st and February 1st. Obviously, that Saturday lines up with Virginia Tech hosting Duke basketball, a really big basketball game. So it's going to be a ruckus atmosphere. Good time to sell the program. But we'll jump into a couple names here, starting off with some of those blue chip, top of the board type prospects. And starting that off with, what do we have here? Chris Whitehead, the number one player in Virginia, 4-star, number 37th nationally, edge prospect from Lloyd C. Bird in Chesterfield, Virginia. Number 5 edge. He's the top player in Virginia. Other schools involved here, Miami, Ohio State, Tennessee, but Virginia Tech is certainly firmly back in the mix with James Franklin, Brent Pry. They just visited him recently, and James Franklin hire definitely changes the calculus here a little bit. Like I said, Franklin visited him earlier this week. So getting back in the mix there, getting him on campus, because Virginia Tech certainly was not in this battle a couple months ago until the Franklin hire. So it's some of those early returns you're seeing with the top player in the state. Now, will he stay the top player in the state? That's to be seen. Could see a little bit of a slide, but still very, very talented player. He's camped really well. So that's one to watch there. Chris Whitehead expected to be on campus this weekend. With him, other top players is top 150. And we discussed this on the show last show. Gabe Jenkins, top player from Amani Christian Academy up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Number 130 safety per 24/7 Sports. Number 5 player in Pennsylvania. Just set up an official visit as well with Virginia Tech. So they've gotten in the mix here pretty quickly. And a note on him was that this weekend he was actually supposed to visit USC, decided to turn down that trip, a little bit closer, go to Virginia Tech. Just recently set that Virginia Tech official visit, top 247 safety, in a recruiting ground that James Franklin is very, very familiar with. Certainly one to watch, as they've highlighted him as a pretty big name to know here early on. So those are 2 guys, 2 4-stars, top 150 guys. Another top guy to keep an eye on in the state, and this is one that we talked about on the show last time as well, but was also recently confirmed. Junior Sanders from Woodbury Forest connection, talking about Sheldon Robinson, who sounds like he's having a nice camp, the safety, true freshman safety from last year. Virginia Tech just signed preferred walk-on Hudson Zell, wide receiver athlete, who has a very close relationship with Junior Sanders, which certainly helps out. James Franklin and I believe Matt Moore were just in to see Sanders today or yesterday. 6'6", 270, number 4 player in Virginia. I think Virginia Tech sits in a really good spot here with Sanders. Has been to campus multiple times, was there for the Miami game last year. I believe a couple game day was supposed to come earlier in the year, but I think made it for the Miami game for sure. Has been to campus a ton of times, someone that's very familiar with Virginia Tech. And that's why I said James Franklin really changes the calculus on a lot of these recruitments, which is really massive because it's about X's and O's in the staff, but you have to increase the talent roster, and they've done that pretty rapidly, but they want to build through the high school ranks, and getting this on a recruiting weekend, getting this type of talent to Blacksburg is a massive step in doing that. Next up, we've got going to the 2028 class for a brief second, some of these top guys. I would be remiss in saying the number 1 player in the class of 2028 for Virginia, Langston Pridgeon from Stonebridge, 2 very highly rated guys from Stonebridge. Langston Pridgeon as well with Keith Nolan Jr., who I could see even jump, maybe even surpass Langston in the rankings. Really good player. I know Nolan was here for the Miami game last year. Not going to make the trip this weekend, it sounds like. But Langston, composite 5-star, as you see there, the number 1 player in Virginia, Stonebridge High School. The connection, Christian Evans a couple years ago, keeping that pipeline. He was at UVA last weekend, so obviously very high priority in the class of 2028. One of the best DBs nationally for 2028, number 36 overall. Ashburn, Virginia in the footprint. That's another one. And as we said, projecting forward to the class of 2028, it's a couple years out, but specifically for the quarterback class in 2028, that cycle is expedited as compared to other positions. And getting him on campus, Caden Kraft, the number 6 quarterback per 24/7 Sports for the class of 2028, number 77 prospect overall nationally from Mooresville, North Carolina. Got the Daytona 500 just a couple weeks away, Mooresville, North Carolina. Very familiar footprint for quarterbacks coach Danny O'Brien from down that way in North Carolina, and somewhere the staff has been familiar with. Lake Norman High School, a couple hours down the road. So to get him up for campus for the Duke game is really big. As you sort of solidify your quarterback plans a cycle and a half early, this is super highly rated top prospect. Got offers from Auburn. Auburn was just in. I mean, all the top schools are in on him. So obviously top priority as that quarterback board is shaping out for 2028. Familiarity with Danny O'Brien, and that's really big to get a quarterback on campus in that 28 class. So those are some of those other top names. As we continue, there's some other top guys in the state of Virginia I would definitely keep an eye on. One of those being, and I dropped a note if you're over on vtscoop.com. We already discussed and dropped a note on it. Ivian Lewis from Huguenot High School, wide receiver out of Richmond, Virginia, number 6 player in Virginia, number 2 wide receiver in Virginia. Was a little banged up this year, but still had very productive numbers. Has already locked in an official visit for June. One of the top wide receivers, has had a relationship with wide receivers coach Fontel Mine since middle school. I think Virginia Tech sits in a pretty good spot here for Ivian Lewis. Still early, still a lot to go on. I know he just dropped his top 11 with Ohio State, USF, Rutgers, Tennessee. Tennessee really likes Tennessee's in the mix. But as those boards continue to shape out, I think Virginia Tech sits in a good spot with Lewis. Big to get him on campus. Has a great relationship with Fontel Mines. And then lastly, one other name that we'll share before we go into some others from the state of Virginia that I think they sit in a good spot with. Talked about this on the side as well for those 2027 class in-state guys. Kumari Hudson from Western Branch High School in Chesapeake. Obviously, the relationship between Western Branch and Virginia Tech, a lot of players coming from there. 6'5", 300, has insane measurables. Number 8 player in Virginia. They've done a really good job there. A ton of big players in it for him, but top 10 player in Virginia and great measurables. So I think they sit in a good spot with him. So getting him on campus this weekend is really big as well. Along with that, we'll go into some other names for the state of Virginia to keep an eye on. Kai Rayner, cornerback. His brother Zahir Rayner was in the mix with Virginia Tech a couple cycles ago. He's been at Minnesota. Don't know if he's found the field. Saw him actually at the Mayo Bowl a couple years ago, but he went out to Minnesota. His father, the head coach there at Trinity Episcopal, you got Davian Fat Rat Brown coming to Virginia Tech, so you got that working in your favor. He'll also be there. A familiar name if you've been covering recruiting for Virginia Tech, El Tanino Hicks. Reclassed last year, was a 2026 guy, reclassed back to 2027. He actually took an official visit to Virginia Tech last year. He's now at St. James Academy with Darrell Overton in them, playing safety, so he'll also make it to campus. Another intriguing name from the state of Virginia, Kevin Parker, athlete. So he's a quarterback at Denby, projects more as an athlete, maybe even a little bit like Tyrell Grant, the 2026 signee who played quarterback for Nansemond, now coming in as a safety. Getting him on campus. A really under-the-radar guy, Anthony Henderson, wide receiver from Kings Fork, also making it the trip up. I think that's someone that could rocket up some boards if he continues his production. A name, Jaron Johnson, I've talked about for a while now, dual sport guy. He transferred to St. Chris, but was at Albemarle for the first couple years of his career. I believe his freshman and sophomore years at Albemarle, playing football and baseball. I'm not sure if he's still playing baseball at St. Chris, but dual sport guy, really good baseball player as well. Has got a ton of physical tools. So to get him on campus, obviously Fontel Mines has a really wide net at the wide receiver position, as you'll see, because also 2027 wide receiver Dante Dent Jr. from Oscar Smith went down. If you want to check out on the socials on X at Kolby_Crawford, if you look up Dante Dent Jr., have a couple clips and highlights from him this offseason, early summer 7-on-7 at Green Run High School. He, looked really good playing against Green Run and a game against Granby. And I forget what the last team was against, but he had a couple touchdowns, long strider, had a decently developed route tree, post, and a pretty good frame. So he's obviously catching passes from the UVA commit. Lonnie Andrews Jr. was playing alongside the Michigan, enrollee now, Travis Johnson. So now he'll probably be that top option at Oscar Smith. They get him on campus. Dante Dent Jr. could be a name to watch. For the 2028 class coming from Virginia, Nansemond River, another really highly rated guy. I was talking with him yesterday. Quincy Gilmer, excited to get back on campus, rekindle that relationship a little bit with Fontel Mines and some of the guys. That's most of the rundown for the state of Virginia specifically. Some other names to keep an eye on from the Carolinas and into Georgia, actually. A ton of Carolinas and Georgias. You got Jonathan Dillon, wide receiver from Durham. Xavier Perkins, defensive lineman from Durham. The staff spent some time down there at the high school looking at those guys. Shannon Harris, wide receivers from Burns, South Carolina. And then quite a few guys from Georgia. I believe Quintarius Gibson trying to get back on campus. Aiden Gibson, running back from South Carolina, not listed, but he's also coming back on campus. He just set an official visit with Virginia Tech as well as South Carolina. What Virginia Tech does at running back is going to be really interesting. They've cast a pretty wide net there early, but Aiden Gibson seems to be one of those guys. Close to the top for Georgia, you got Riley Drew, the cornerback from Grayson. Jay Shell is also coming, a linebacker. Trace Washington, linebacker from Georgia. Carter Mathis, the big offensive lineman from Georgia, is also coming. And then Charles Nance, defensive lineman from Georgia. So those are some of the guys. It's going to be a massive, massive weekend. So I implore you to follow on the socials at Kolby_Crawford. We'll have pictures, updates, recaps coming from it. We'll have all the updates. A lot of that will be trickling out here. Going to plan to go live here on the YouTube channel following Saturday and potentially Sunday's recruiting event to try and just give us a general rundown of how it went. But make sure to follow over there on X at Kolby_Crawford, and we'll have a rundown of that. And subscribe here because it's going to be a massive weekend. They're hosting a ton of prospects, and it's just a massive, massive weekend for Virginia Tech, and it's their last opportunity before the dead period. So that was a pretty basic snapshot. I know I just went rapid fire on a ton of names. If you have any questions specifically, dump them in the live chat. I'd be more than happy to go more in depth. If you're just joining, make sure to subscribe to the show, like the video, share the show with a friend. There is no offseason. I know the portals wind down. They're just starting winter workouts, but there's still a ton going on. So make sure to subscribe, like the video, because we're going to have some good content rolling out here. Next up, I'm going to jump in straight to some facilities updates talk. Our friend of the program, Doug Bowman, the FOIA King, was stumbling along and found Board of Visitors note for a resolution for a capital plan project, the Beamer Lawson practice facility. So $800,000 was approved for the design phase. Pretty much they're looking to add HVAC, heating and cooling to the Beamer Lawson practice facility. I know the total cost estimate is close to $8 million, I believe it says, and it's part of the Virginia Tech Invest to Win plan that they pitched last offseason. So as you look at the slide there, if you're on podcast, we'll read it out. The Beamer Lawson practice facility was completed in 2015. Their scope of the project is looking to install a mechanical system to condition the facility and add insulation to meet energy code requirements. I know there was a little bit of ire about that building code change from 2015 to 2026. Going back and adding insulation is not the easiest or cheap process. Funding the project, $800,000 for planning the project budget, and then the funding will come from the athletics auxiliary revenues, which I believe they said will be about $8 million. I know that's steep to a lot of people, and it probably is just overall in general, but I think it's really big and actually tied in with this. I almost forgot, but there's a pretty good anecdote tied in with this personally. It would be my first year, I guess, ever covering college football, right after Brent Pry's first season. It was the spring of 2023. And it was the first pro day under the Brent Pry era. And it was really, I guess, a Chamari Connor pro day. Ended up getting drafted by the Chiefs, Super Bowl, pretty productive career so far. But that pro day, it was one of my first events ever covering. And I remember I went in with like a dress shirt and just a jacket. And inside the practice facility, it was probably close to 15 degrees. You could see your breath. It was absolutely freezing. And you've heard of the cases of guys, your soft generation, whatever it is, but you get walking pneumonia and getting sick from going to winter workouts in the morning because it's so cold. I mean, this is middle of March, time for a pro day, and it was absolutely freezing. And, I was cold. Obviously, I don't hold any bearing there, but one of the head scouts for an NFL team went up to Pry and kind of gave him a piece of his mind, like, you have got to get this place heated. And it almost came off the tone that Pry was like, started laughing or whatever, thought he was joking, and it became abundantly clear pretty quickly that he was not joking. And the vibe kind of changed because, everyone was sort of joking, having a good time with it. And then obviously not on the same page. A lot of the people were very frustrated with the facilities and it being cold. So for a lot of the months out of the year, not a big deal. In the summer, you can open up the doors up. You get some airflow in there. But during the winter, it certainly gets cold. And that was just an anecdote from the pro day. I don't think I've ever said on the show that head scout was very, very frustrated with Brent Pry and made that a top priority list. Now, it didn't happen under Brent Pry's head coaching tenure, but here under James Franklin with the investment plan, and that's something they're looking to go back and change, adding HVAC to the indoor facility here relatively quickly. So that's something to note. Some other stuff to note, Lane Stadium video board, as Doug also highlighted, I think $5.5 million replacement in motion to get the new board in there, not make it bigger, but just get the new board. So as part of the FY26 one-time expenses still, and I believe that takes it up almost all the way, that first one-time expense budget. But I think the part of the holdover left over in that next line item was LED lights. So I think, you got the video board, HVAC for the indoor practice facility, and next up, LED lights. So I don't know if that will be as early as the fall, but I think that next item will be LED lights. And I think you could see that relatively quickly in Lane Stadium. So those are some of the notes on the facilities. If you're just joining, subscribe to the show, like the video. It costs you nothing, helps me out a ton. I really appreciate it. Year-round college football coverage. Lastly, we'll get into some staff salaries, a little bit of team scoop, and live chat questions. So if you have a question, jump it in the live chat, and we'll get to it. Next up, staff salaries. I know there was a little bit of a question here with some of those guys. The last piece of the on-staff or the on-field staff that was put together was Nick Perry coming in as cornerbacks coach. He'll be making $400,000 And just the salaries for some of these other coaches will list out. James Franklin, $6 million. Brent Pry, defensive coordinator, $1.5 million. Ty Howe, OC, $900,000. Coach Chaos on the D-line making $750,000. Fontel Mines making $600,000. Matt Moore, offensive line, making $600,000. Norville McKenzie at running backs coming from Georgia Tech, making $550,000. Nick Perry and Anthony Midget both making $400,000. Special teams coordinator Doug Shearer making $350,000. Quarterbacks coach Danny O'Brien making $300,000. Vic Hall at Nichols also making $300,000. And the GM Andy Frank is also making $300,000. So close to, I think, $3 million left over in the budget for potential assistant salaries, which could go to some of those off-field staff guys. As we've talked about, broke the news, Warren Ruggiero a couple months ago, Danny Rocco, Josh Conklin, as we talked about on the show last week. So some of those guys obviously adding a ton of analyst positions to the staff, but just putting a bow on that. And then lastly, we'll just get into it super early still. Like they just started. I mean, shoot, there's been more snow days of school than actual school days, it feels like. So a lot of these transfers just getting their feet under them. But one note from workouts that I've heard is that Montavious Cunningham, one of the oldest guys on the team, him and Kamari Copeland, the two class of 2021 guys left on the roster. Sounds like he's having a pretty solid start to winter workouts, which is really big. Obviously, hasn't probably been able to put it all together at the Power 4 level between injuries and just not being able to see the field coming from Georgia State. Sounds like he's had a solid first couple days. Now, there's still a long way to go, but if he factors into that right guard discussion and really takes that step, being one of the most veteran guys, has a ton of snaps under his belt. So hearing pretty positive early returns there. Was injured for a lot of 2025. And, there were some questions about him getting that eligibility. Sounds like he will be back on. So that's a really big part of the offensive line to hear semi-positive returns on here pretty early. So that'll do it for most of the show stack rundown. Like I said, if you're just joining, subscribe to the show. Go check out vtscoop.com. Running a great promo on the VIP deal. Get 2 months of VIP content for $1. 2 months for $1 or 50% off annual. And that ends February 5th. So make sure to go check it out, vtscoop.com. And we'll have updates here as well. So subscribe. That's all free. And we love making the content come out to you. So with that, jump into the live chat, answer whatever questions you guys have. And like I said, some notes for the show. Would expect a live show or maybe a recording. Let me know what you want in the live chat this weekend after the junior day. Probably have an update, either a recording or a live video. Let me know what you guys want to see. And that'll probably come out Saturday. Outside of that, talking to the coaches. And I see in the live chat, hopefully locking down and locking in a date here pretty soon to have a sit-down interview with Josh Clark, cornerback on the team. So that'll be coming out. Looking forward to that. But yeah, appreciate the support. Subscribe, and let's jump into the live chat. Got Amari Smith saying potential commits after this weekend. There's always a chance of that, and there's a couple guys you could keep an eye on, but I'm not expecting it. With this new staff coming in, a lot of overturn. I wouldn't expect it as early as this weekend. Now, I could see some come March, April, obviously into official visit season. And James Franklin has been one to known to shut down a lot of recruitments pretty early. But I think this is still pretty early for a lot of these prospects to make that choice. There's some I could be watching. I don't know, because I think a lot of these guys are going to take some other visits. So I'm not expecting any after this weekend, but good question. Got Ryan here with the comment, Hokies win 8 in 2026, 10 in 2027. How long does Franklin stay in Blacksburg before trying to jump to a school with a stronger anchor in the Super Conference? Is VT then realistically a candidate? Yeah, it's a good question. Now you are going under the basis that you're presuming 8 wins in 26 and 10 in 2027. In this day and age of player movement, coach movement, you're always looking for that next opportunity, right? A lot like people would in the professional world, trying to make the best for their opportunities for their career as well. Is Virginia Tech realistically a candidate to get in? Who knows what the next level of expansion looks like? James Franklin rapidly increases their profile as a brand to get them into that. Is that Super League 40 teams? Is it 50 teams? Is it 30 teams? Is it 24 teams, as you've seen? I think a pretty good metric for that was where Virginia Tech was recruiting. 45, 46, 48, 42, sort of middling there under Brent Pry. James Franklin comes in and jumps that class to top 25. Now, that's just recruiting rankings and no results on the field. But as some of these TV contracts and conferences look over the next really 3 seasons, close to 2028, 2029, having really productive results on the field and increasing the value of your brand is going to be really important when that next big blow up comes, whether that's collective bargaining, TV deals, conference realignment. It only helps. Now, would that stop Franklin from jumping ship? I'm not sure. But either way, you have to look at, and I know private equity discussion is something totally different, but that's just how people, coaches, investors look at colleges now. They are businesses. They are brands. How do you rapidly increase the value of your asset? James Franklin has done that. The financial reports just came out for Virginia Tech. When you see every other sponsored collegiate athletic team at Virginia Tech lost money, and Virginia Tech football made close to $33 million. How do you keep making that asset more valuable? That's how they're looking at it. And James Franklin hiring has only done that. Facilities, personnel, stature, all of it. So whether he leaves or stays, it's only helped the institution, which I think everyone knew getting on board with that there pretty early. Got Mike. Coach Franklin is bringing some big-time recruits this weekend. Is it Saturday, Sunday, both? When does the dead period start? Yep, great question. So it is Saturday and Sunday, the 31st and the 1st, and the dead period starts the day right after that. All of February goes dead. So it really takes out that entire month that you used to be able to host for junior days and such. So you really only have January. So it did hinder them a little bit with last weekend, the snow. I know UVA still hosted theirs. But, yeah, Saturday and Sunday, trying to maximize the time to get, 50-plus recruits. I know we just went through a ton of names, but there's a ton more I didn't even touch on in the show. If you missed that, make sure to go back and watch the rewind of overall synopsis of some of the top guys coming in. But, yeah, they've got their hands full this weekend for sure. Mike saying, are most of these 27s? Yeah, that's certainly the emphasis for this weekend, really leaning into that 2027 class. When you bring in a whole new staff, you don't have your recruiting board all in order. You're shipping out new offers, re-offering. So you're trying to get that baseline. And then for 2028, like I said, you're hosting Caden Croft from Lake Norman, that top-rated 2028 quarterback, because 2028's quarterbacks are pretty much 2027 other athletes because you got to be a cycle ahead. So, yeah. Yeah, Mike, as we just touched on, Caden Croft, seeing this kid as a baller, yeah, really, really dynamic player. Number 6 quarterback in the nation for 247 Sports, top 100 guy down there at Mooresville. Really big to get him on campus. So, expected to be here. Wouldn't expect any changes. Maybe the weather halts that. Follow here or on the socials at Kolby_Crawford. We will have junior day coverage all throughout the day. Mike, Ivian Lewis had Shane Beamer visiting him today at Huguenot. Yeah, South Carolina's in the mix. Just dropped an article over on 247sports.com about 10 days ago, I guess now. It was 2 Sundays ago. 2 Sundays ago now that he released his top 11. Ohio State was in there. Tennessee is certainly in the mix. South Carolina's in the mix. Virginia, Purdue was just at Purdue a weekend ago. But I still like where Virginia Tech sits. A lot to play out there, but Virginia Tech sits in a good spot. Got Jonathan Breedlove on here, Jermaine Green, IMG Academy, but from the 757. Haven't heard that name for this weekend. The guy that they've been involved with was Andre Alexander Jr., the linebacker, originally from Chesapeake. I have a couple updates on him over on the site. Not visiting this weekend, but they've been involved down there at IMG in the class of 2028. Obviously, a lot of Virginia guys have gone down to IMG and had success. You look at Dalen Everett, former classmate, teammate of mine at from Norfolk, turned from Norview to IMG, 3-year starter at Georgia, SEC championship game MVP. Katron Allen, someone Penn State and James Franklin is very familiar with, from Norfolk, Virginia as well, transferring to IMG, has a great successful career there, was the all-time rushing leader at Penn State, or touchdowns. Very impressive. So somewhere that James Franklin's familiar with, can Virginia Tech crack into IMG? That'd be really massive. Got Ashton Crowder was in the indoor this morning. It had to be -10. God bless heating upgrades. Yeah, like I said, if you missed the anecdote, go back and check it out. But that pro day, and maybe I was being even a little gracious with the 15 degrees. It was absolutely freezing. I was holding my camera. I couldn't even feel my hands. And, it was Chamari Connor. I'm trying to think about Silas was there, I believe. And it was one of my first events covering. And it was just so funny to be privy to that conversation where Brent Pry's going over, talking to the scouts, laughing, joking. And everyone's laughing, joking. And it almost seems like he's joking where he's like, you have to get heating for here, with a couple silly words or words that'll get demonetized mixed in the mix. And it was like, oh, you're not kidding. So I don't know if he probably sent out some other junior scouts to cover following pro days after that. But that was pretty funny. So obviously winter workouts are freezing when you get in there at 5 a.m., 6 a.m. So to get it temperature regulated is going to be really big for the just overall standing of the program, but it's going to be quite expensive adding insulation to a building of that size and one that wasn't coded or built for that. I know there's going to be quite an overhaul in facilities. Merriman, obviously discussion of, you see Bud Foster over on X today talking about building a football-only facility, which I think is coming down the pipe. Agreed, but you're not taking out the old growth forest, right? So you're taking out the practice field across the street. You're going to have a walkover bridge. There's a whole lot of plans. Are you going to move forward with the Hokie Village that you talked about being pitched, or the entertainment district that you've talked about? Is Castles Coliseum going back to where Chicken Hill is? There's a whole lot up in the air with facilities. And James Franklin is going to be driving that and a driving force to move the needle, as he's done at Penn State and other institutions. But there's still a lot to play out. I think Merriman, in the meantime, will see quite some rapid upgrades. So they've already done some smaller stuff on the interior, but I think you're going to see some larger scale stuff as well. Mike, actually, as I just touched on, would long-range goal to have a football-only building? Yeah, that's what they're building to. Certainly, that's what James Franklin is driving for. Mike, hope they don't waste money on LEDs. I know certain people feel differently about it. I think eventually Virginia Tech will install LED lights, and I think it's probably the next project up on the docket after the scoreboard and heating the Lawson facility, the indoor practice field. Mike, how many are allowed out recruiting at a time? How do they strategize recruiting? So you get 10 on-field coaches out on the road, and everyone has their section. We're still trying to figure out who has what sections. Like, Fontel Mines has down in the 757, but he was up in Maryland seeing Scrap McAfee. So it's kind of, go where you can right now. Last week's junior day being canceled kept the coaches out on the road, and they've been road warriors. And James Franklin is a head coach that loves to be out on the road, especially in the season. So that's something I probably should have even highlighted if you're just tuning in now on the last week or last show talking about the ACC schedule. What is that, 3 potentially Friday night games? James Franklin loves to go out on the road Friday nights and recruit. So you got 3 Friday night games where he's not able to be on the road recruiting, potentially because you've got games. So I think that was something I definitely should have noted, because he's a head coach that loves to get out on the road and takes up a lot of those days himself. So that's how they're sort of strategizing it right now. You're just kind of drinking from a fire hose here early. But, as we get a clearer picture of who's got what zones and categories, yeah. Amari, so all these are supposed to be done before this upcoming season. No, the heating project, they're still in the design phase. The scoreboard, I'm not exactly sure. I think that's one that could be done. And LEDs is also next up on the docket. Now, will that be the 2026 season or 2027? Not sure. I don't think it would go beyond 2027 is kind of what it sounds like. I'm not sure if they'll get them in this fall, but I think they're already moving along with the scoreboard. But the HVAC project is certainly going to take more time. Got Ashton Crowder. All right, we'll go live after on Saturday. So Duke basketball game probably wraps up around 2. Ballpark probably around 3 or 3:30 on Saturday. We'll be going live, or maybe even a little later that afternoon to talk some junior day updates and just a little recruiting wrap up. Got Mike. Yes, get Joshua Clark and see if you can get Brody Adams. Well, I got good news for you. If you're watching on YouTube like you are, click on the channel, go over to playlist and check out our conversation with Brody Adams. We talked to them last year. It was 2026. Last summer, I believe, went close to 20, 25 minutes, just talking a ton of stuff. So you can just look that up. Brody Keelan Adams interview. Got that on the channel and should have Josh Clark coming here soon. So, yeah, appreciate the support. Love doing those. Looking forward to getting those out. Got Jackson Woody in here. Definitely not the first time you've thought of this. If the ACC collapsed in 2030, which alternative conference would you personally like to see Virginia Tech join? Big 10, SEC, or Big 12? Out of those three options, for just overall any school, I think would be pretty blunt in telling you the Big 12 would be slid over in that third category, as they might be on the chopping block as well with the ACC. So the Big 10 and SEC are certainly those two power leagues that you want to be accompanied with. So it's one of those two leagues. The Big 10 obviously has the academic standing that the ACC wants to be known as an athletics and academics conference. The AAU accreditation is really big for the Big 10. That's why UNC has been tied into the Big 10, even though the SEC market of not having a Carolina team potentially. Sounds like certain people in administration definitely favor Big 10, but there's other strings that want to go down and play in the SEC bowl, which always has a hand in everything. Out of all those leagues, I mean, it really depends because the Big 10 currently has the biggest contract. The SEC obviously just inked that deal with ESPN. You're seeing the SEC draw the largest figures on games year in and year out. What are those conferences going to look like? Because expansion, they're going to expand and add more teams. I think for Virginia Tech, a lot of the fan base probably fits better in that Southeastern Conference just overall. But, I mean, the Big 10, coast to coast, at athletic and academic standing, if you could get an invite to either, you jump at it immediately. It doesn't matter which one. You're not waiting for preferential treatment of the Big 10 or SEC, whichever one will let you in. Would you personally like to see? I'd personally like to see Virginia Tech in the SEC. But, I mean, parity is at an all-time high. Vanderbilt is competing in the SEC. Indiana just won the national championship from the Big 10. So if you get in either of those, it rapidly increases your stature inside college football. Jackson, appreciate the support, man. Thank you. Andrew, any idea to when spring practice starts? Early March. So Virginia Tech spring break this year is what, March 7th to 15th? I know Colorado and different programs have done the thing where they stagger. They'll do a week on spring break and then continue on, with the spring game being April 18th. And you get 15 practices between then. I could see them starting, that Monday or Tuesday after break and then fitting in after that. And that's what they did under Pry a little bit, was right after whatever spring break was, you fit in the 15 between then. So I could definitely see that. You get back, I believe the 15th is Sunday. So you got the 16th to the 18th, about close to 28-ish days to fit in 15 practices, a couple of scrimmages. I could see that. Andrew, are recruits going to the Duke game? Yes. If you're attending the Duke game, there will be recruits sitting in the stands. They'll be all over. Typically, if you're looking at the tunnel in Castle Coliseum, they'll be scattered all about. Honestly, because the Duke game, there's going to be a lot of people there. It's kind of tough for seats. Like I remember Carter Stallard committed to Virginia Tech. I believe maybe it was at the Duke game a couple years ago. It was in February, and he was sitting up, if you're looking at the tunnel, almost in the nosebleeds on the top left side, staring at the tunnel in Castle, sitting with Brent Pry and I believe Ron Crook at the time, committed. But they'll be littered sort of on that tunnel side section. But, yeah, they'll be there. Mike, I thought President Sand's goal coming to Virginia Tech was to pick up the AAU accreditation. It certainly is and certainly still is, but it's just more of an ambiguous process where Virginia Tech can fit all those metrics and markers. It's just they decide when it's time for you to get that. So they've built themselves towards that. They're on a much better track to gain AAU accreditation. It's just sort of that brutal waiting game. Got Amari Smith. Have we heard the time for the spring game? No, that is still TBD. I'm also sort of waiting for that. Got a wedding later on April 18th, one of my good friends' wedding. So we'll see if we even make it to the spring game. But no official time has been announced for the April 18th spring game. Good question. Yeah. So with that, I think we'll sign off for tonight. Appreciate everyone jumping on here. I say it all the time. I really hope it never comes off as cheap because it really does mean the world. Doing this. It's an absolute dream. Had a ton of fun, and it's all because of you guys. So thank you so much. Make sure to like the video, subscribe if you enjoyed, share the show with a friend. College football all the time. Stay safe this weekend. Stay warm. It is absolutely freezing here in Blacksburg. I don't know where everyone else is watching, but stay dry. I hope expecting maybe some more snow this weekend. And we'll have updates here on the channel and over on vtscoop.com throughout the junior day and beyond as they take on everything. So make sure to subscribe, and we will see you Saturday going live around 3, 4, 5, sometime in that range to recap all of junior day. But until then, thank you for supporting. Peace out. Have a great weekend. God bless.